How's everybody doing? Good. All right, what a beautiful day. We just took a tour. It was terrific. Certainly, as we are walking around, it's beautiful to see Duke Farms. But good afternoon. My name is Paul Drake. I'm the Somerset County Commissioner. And certainly, it's my pleasure. We're going to have a great program today. My role today is really just to kick off this event. First, I'd like to thank Margaret Waldock for hosting this important event here at Duke Farms. Certainly, Somerset County, by all questions, is very fortunate to have such an amazing resource in our county. So I want to thank you very much. Certainly, as you hear today, Duke Farms is a national leader in advancing so many environmental initiatives, including sustainable agriculture and many important global lessons on climate change. I spent a lot of time here as one of the gardeners here in the community garden. But before we start the formal program, I want to recognize Doug Fisher, the Secretary of Agriculture, for a few words.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I've been here at Duke Farms many times, but I'm always so impressed with the work that's done here and just the mission. Let me put these things. And the mission and the story of Duke Farms. I want to thank the County Commissioner for spearheading this event of women in agriculture. And that's a big topic because there are so many women that are so important and so valuable to the agricultural landscape of the state. They have amazing farm operations. They're involved in so many decisions that are made throughout the state. We have our own state board members. Debbie Norris is here on the State Board of Agriculture. Holly Christina is here, a newest board member. Erica Puskis, sorry. They are going to, really help transform the board. Many of the decisions that are going to be made now in the future for agriculture, and we're so excited that they're on the board with us. So glad to be here. It's very impressive, and it's really curious and interested to what the panelists are going to say today about the role of women in agriculture, which since the beginning of agriculture, women have played a big role in agriculture. But now we're just going to hear about that. There's added dimensions that we think will bring to the forefront. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. So just a few more words. Tropical storm, as you know, Tropical Storm Ida showed us the immense power of nature. Certainly, there's no engineering design that could account for a rainfall event of 8.5 inches in 4 hours. But really, to paraphrase Ian McCard, we need to design with nature. We know that also food insecurity is a real issue here in Somerset County, and this is further amplified during a storm when so many people are displaced from their homes. Farmers in the agriculture industry are very important to Somerset County. Farmers put food on our table, and they are the stewards of our natural land base. Through Somerset County's Farmland Preservation Program, the county has been able to preserve a total of 120 farms throughout our 21 municipalities, equaling approximately 8,300 acres of land. And as you see in the back table, the draft county farmland preservation plan is now available for review and comment from the public, and we encourage all of you to review that both online and, as you see, a copy in the back. But this plan is an update to the 2008 plan, and has a renewed focus today about education and outreach, as well as coordination of farm bills throughout Somerset County. And certainly, it's very exciting that our program today will discuss the growing and important contribution of women in our industry. We have Margaret Waldock, who's the Executive Director of Duke Farms. We have Lauren Salvatore, who's the Sustainability Agriculture Coordinator for Duke Farms. We have Joanne Powell, who's a Professor of Animal Science at Delaware Valley University. We have Debbie Norris, who's from Hillsborough here, co-owner and co-operator of Norris Hills Farm and Market. And we also have Erica Puskis, the co-operator and co-owner of the Middlebush Dairy Farm and Big Cow Creamery. And I believe Susan Payne and Jeff Everett are members from SADC here, but I know they send their regards. But I also want to recognize the important work of our Somerset County Planning Department, including Walt Lane, who's the Director of Planning, and most importantly, who works for him, Kate Kasser, who is the planner who works so closely with our agricultural community here in Somerset County, as well as the County Ag Development Board. Without her organizational skills, this event would not have happened. And finally, I want to recognize my friend Tony Mccracken, who was a planner with the planning department. And after 34 years, he has announced his retirement. So the farmers in the county are going to miss him, but certainly we wish him good luck in his retirement. I'm sure we'll see him on the farm or on the golf course. But thank you. Now I want to introduce Commissioner Ellie Morano, my colleague, and she'll lead the next part of this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner, and welcome everybody. We are blessed with a gorgeous day in a perfect venue, so we are so proud and happy to be here. Our thanks again to our State Secretary of Agriculture. Thank you so much for coming with us, Secretary Fisher. Thank you so much, Cindy and Rachel, for coming out too. We really appreciate it. And let me acknowledge our president of the Somerset County Agricultural Development Board, Mark Kirby, is here with us today. So we are surrounded by some really great people, so thanks for being here. As you know, I love to be Somerset's best cheerleader and tell you all the fabulous things we have here. And I'm going to tell you a really interesting fun fact. Somerset County has the highest number of female farmers in the state. So I'm really, really proud about that. Spoken from a woman who serves on a commissioner's board of 60% females. So Somerset County, we appreciate our female farmers and we welcome you here today. Thank you so much for being with us. I am going to be passing the mic along so that you all can introduce yourself before we start the panel. All right?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Salvatore. I am the Sustainable Agriculture Coordinator here at Duke Farms. I grew up right here in Hillsborough. I did not have much experience with agriculture as a child. I got to ride horses because it is New Jersey. We know we have a lot of those. So I was fortunate my parents let me take riding lessons, and that led me to leasing and working on horse farms in high school and college. But then in college, I strayed again. I went to Rutgers for a degree in environmental policy, and that landed me here at Duke Farms. And I was lucky enough here to get to know our sustainable agriculture manager, who's also our grazing manager, really, and asked him a lot of questions, and I got really interested in the cattle, which led to sort of a mentorship for me to get to learn about grazing and agriculture here at Duke Farms and the position that I'm in now. So I'm definitely the beginner on this panel. I've only been in agriculture for about 3 years, I believe. That's a really awesome story.
I have the opposite story. My name is Erica Peskis. I dairy farm in Franklin Township in Somerset County with my husband's family, and he's the third generation at that location as a dairy farmer. But I grew up on a dairy farm myself in central Pennsylvania, and I come from, 8+ generations on one side of dairy farmers. And so I'm steeped in that tradition, but I'm in a different location, and it's much different in a suburban area versus a really rural area. I went to Delaware Valley College now, Delaware Valley University for dairy science, and I worked on our family farm for a few years. And then after we were married, I came here and I dairy farm with my husband's family now. I primarily do herd health, the herd health area of our farm. So that involves managing the calves, milking cows, managing the reproduction end of that business. And but basically, I can help in all areas on the farm, and consider it a huge privilege to have grown up on a dairy farm and get to continue to do that today.
Hi, everybody. I'm Margaret Waldock. I'm the executive director here at Duke Farms, and I am not a farmer, nor have I ever been a farmer, but I have been working in the conservation field for over 20 years. And I really credit that with the sort of my early origin story, which is my parents, who were working class kids from the city of Rochester, New York, managed somehow to scrape up enough money to buy less than an acre of land that was carved off by the farmer who ran the truck farm behind our house. And so I thought of myself as a farmer growing up because I played in cucumbers and pumpkins and the woods and streams of that farm. And I also understood I got a good understanding or an appreciation for the relationship that farmers have with rural communities and the importance that they play in those rural economies. And I also trespassed a lot on farmers' land. So apologies for that. But it really formed a real love and appreciation of nature in me. And I pursued a law degree at Vermont Law School, which is the country's premier environmental law school, nestled in the Green Mountains of Vermont, a great place to study. And then I started a career working for various conservation organizations, including American Farmland Trust, made my way to the state of New Jersey, did a little stint at the Green Acres program, and then went to TPL with Cindy Roberts, who I didn't know was going to be here, and was there for a very brief time, but learned a lot from those professionals, and then went on to run the Hunterdon Land Trust in Hunterdon County, which I like to think of as an organization that has a lot of similarities with Duke Farms in terms of their commitment to farmland preservation, and they also have a historic farmstead that they own and operate down in Flemington. Then I went to the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation, continued to do grant making there that focused on land preservation in the state of New Jersey and supporting the nonprofits that facilitate that. And then I got to land here, which is really my dream job. Can't believe that I'm here. Grateful to all the staff here at Duke Farms because all the progress that you see here today is due completely to them. Folks like Lauren, who are very committed to the work and mission of this organization. So I'm glad that we could host this convening because I think we're all ready for in-person meetings, having been virtual for far too long. And I'm glad that we could accommodate you all here today.
My name is Joanne Powell, and I guess my official hat today is that I'm here as an instructor of animal science from Delaware Valley University. But I grew up in agriculture in Somerset County. My family owns a farm, sits in Bridgewater and Bedminster. I grew up milking cows there. It's permanently preserved, so it's going to be there forever. And we're actually prepping the next generation to take that over. I've done a lot of things in life. I worked for Merck in animal health research. I worked at Rutgers as a farm manager and part-time lecturer. And really, I got my dream job too now. I'm actually back at the school I graduated from, an Aggie, and very proud of that and very proud of the young people, especially the young women that I get to influence and interact with every single day. Here in Somerset County, I've been really active in our County Board of Agriculture. I've actually held every office there except treasurer. They won't trust me with a checkbook for whatever reason. President of New Jersey Hereford Association, been on the board of directors for New Jersey Farm Bureau, and I was actually the co-chair of the Corzine Agricultural Transition Team eons ago. So thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Good afternoon. My name is Debbie Norris. I'm a farmer in Somerset County. I did not grow up on a farm. I grew up through 4-H though. I was not involved in agriculture until I met my husband. So for 28 years now, I've been a farmer. And like Joanne, I'm on the Somerset County Board of Agriculture. I'm also a state Board of Agriculture member right now representing the farmers in New Jersey. I'm in my junior term, and it's a 4-year commitment that you make on a volunteer basis. One of the things that I'm most proud of is being able to work with the Somerset County 4-H through the animal programs that they have there. There's been many kids that we've released animals to that have had the ability to work with animals that never would have had that chance or opportunity before. And from there, and with Mark's wife, Nancy, coaching them as much as she does, we've actually produced quite a bit of kids that are involved in dairy and other aspects that leave New Jersey and go to schools, and they kind of look at the kids and go, "You're from New Jersey?" And we've done an amazing job with training the youth and getting that next generation prepped to take over and be the future that they need to be. So thank you.
So we have a fantastic group of panelists with us today, bringing very varied segments of the agricultural community. together. So this is awesome. So the first question I want to pose today is the work of conservation and stewardship. We hear a lot about that. People's minds immediately go to government entities like the county or universities like Rutgers here. But I want to talk about that and how it's important and what you do in your roles with conservation and stewardships. I'd like to start with Margaret and Erica on this question, and just give the mic back to you guys.
Thank you very much. So this theme is very near and dear to my heart, and also this is really what Duke Farms is all about. So how many people went on the tour this morning? Okay, so you got to see Duke Farms stewardship and conservation in action. For those of you who weren't able to, I invite you back. We are a public institution open to visitation, so please come back and visit us. But for those who don't understand the history of Duke Farms, this is a legacy of our founder, our benefactor, Doris Duke, who had a vast fortune and properties all over the world, and in her last will and testament designated that Duke Farms and one other property that she owned in Hawaii would be the only fixed assets that the foundation would retain. She had a fierce commitment to this place, and I think that speaks a lot about the importance of Duke Farms in terms of not only her own life, but I like to think that she understood the sort of changing landscape around her throughout her lifetime and saw what was happening in Somerset County in terms of development and recognized the importance of this 2,700 acre contiguous piece of ground and how important it would be to the future of the communities here in Somerset. But she was very specific. The mission of the Duke Farms Foundation is a commitment to steward this land for the protection of wildlife and biodiversity. So that is what drives us here. I recognize that while we are farming, we are not traditional farmers. We're not small business owners. We're not making a living off of the farm. But there's a lot of overlap and intersection between the kinds of conservation practices that we're deploying here, using farming, particular cows and rotational grazing, to support habitat restoration for threatened and endangered bird species in particular, and to really look at farming as a way to complement conservation and the protection of those wildlife species that we are entrusted with doing. So our mission drives different decisions in terms of the kinds of farming we deploy here, because we have to have those conservation outcomes. But I think there's a lot that we can contribute to in terms of the conversation around regenerative ag here at Duke Farms in Somerset County and beyond.
I'll come at that question or that topic from a little bit of a different angle. We're a commercial dairy farm. We sell our milk wholesale through Reddington Farms, so it's in your ShopRite grocery stores. We also do cash crops, hay, grain, corn. So we're looking at it from an angle of how to preserve the land so that it's able to feed people continuously. And our cows are part of that story. Cows generate a lot of manure, and that's a tremendous asset to a dairy farmer. And actually, I mean, to any farmer, honestly, our dairy facility is a composting bedded pack. So as the cows live in there, they turn the material and compost it, and it becomes a tremendous nutrient. And so we return that to the soil. We're constantly working to try and incorporate nitrogen by rotating crops. Soybeans and legumes produce nitrogen, and so if we rotate, them into a field, and they put nitrogen back into the soil for the corn the following year. So crop rotation is another method that we use on the farm. Cover crops, planting cover crops, so that during the winter time, when an annual crop like corn is no longer standing in the field and the root system isn't there to protect the soil, we'll plant a cover crop that can winter over, that can hold that soil and prevent erosion. And honestly, all of that is just part of a greater mission that we'll be able to keep the farm on the property, keep the farm in the community. We have a giant fiberglass cow in our pasture, and she's sort of like a local legend. When we tell someone where we live, we say, that big fiberglass cow, the big cow on South Middlebush Road, and more often than not, they recognize that landmark. And actually, my mother-in-law didn't grow up on a dairy farm, but she grew up driving by the pasture and seeing the cows there, not, imagining that she would ever be a part of that business. But that's the legacy that we have in our community, and we're very interested in staying there. And in order to do that, we're very aware that we need to take care of the precious resource that we have.
So I want to also emphasize that in addition to the stewardship and conservation practices that Lauren and our farm team are engaged on, as well as our stewardship staff, that we also are in a great position to provide a point of engagement for the public, as you are all here today. You can visit this place, you can see these practices, conservation practices demonstrated in place. But then we have programs that are really designed to orient the visitor here to what the concept of a food system is, right? We want people to understand where their food comes from, right? And we believe that by connecting people to that reality, right? We have a farm-to-table cafe right over here that is still open for outdoor dining if you want to come back for lunch. Our home menu is designed around the products that Duke Farms produces, including our beef, as well as products that are sourced from local farms. We have educational programming that we conduct here, including a farmers market that happens every Sunday. And the whole idea behind those programs is we want people to understand that it matters where you get your food, and it matters to Somerset County, right? Because when we eat seasonally, we're reducing food miles, right? The distance it takes to get your food to you, which is really a great way to play a role in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We're eating healthier. And so all of our programs are designed for that. And our hope is that not only will that, what we want to happen from those educational programs is that the person who comes here and is oriented towards a food system is going to support Moore's Hill Farm, is going to support the dairy farm that's left in their community, right? The more educated consumers are as to why it matters their food choices, the better it's going to be for all of the farmers who are growing locally and trying to, remain productive in a state that has a lot of pressure on farmers right now. So that's definitely a part of our mission as well, that public education and outreach component.
And that's actually a great segue into our next question that I want to pose to the panel. Somerset County has a conservation plan. As Commissioner Drake mentioned, we have preserved 8,900 acres of farmland. Our latest Farmland Preservation Plan has a goal of 16,000 preserved acres. So Somerset County does have a commitment to agriculture. Our tagline is making vibrant connections. So I want to pose a question this time to Erica and Debbie, because you are our farmers here in county. How do we make that connection with the public, like Margaret was saying on her side? So let me start with Erica, and then we'll jump over to Debbie.
I think that probably all of us have learned, maybe especially during the pandemic, that anytime you talk to someone face to face, there's so much value. And currently, we don't have an established program like Moore's do, where people come to the farm, to conduct business. But we do have a lot of people who just stop in and want to know what's going on. And we've done school tours through some dairy checkoff funded programs that farmers pay into to promote their product. And of course, we've done some 4-H groups have come. We do lease for dairy calves to 4-Hers, and so they come, and we've had a really, really wonderful experience with that, helping kids who grew up in on a quarter acre have a dairy calf and understand how that ties into their food system. But specifically talking about making connections with people, I think you need to talk to people. So I think we all recognize that, but it's really scary for farmers when we often perceive the public to be threatening. And but we've learned, just as we've had little side enterprises like selling sweet corn or selling flowers along the side of the road, that people want to talk about their food so much. They want to get a glimpse of your animals, and they have honest questions that aren't they're just pure ignorance. They haven't had the opportunity. And so I think anytime that people, Margaret's talking about welcoming people to help other farmers by just starting the conversation, and I think that's really where the most change and education is done.
I absolutely concur with what Erica said. People are thirsty for knowledge, and one of the taglines that's being used now is "Stay local to loyal." It's really important that not only is it reducing emissions by going to your local farm and supporting your local farm, you're also helping keeping agriculture viable in your community. And when people do come to our farm, we do a lot of agritourism, and we have the normal things, but we also have signs around that explain different things and how things grow, like sweet corn, or I'm just trying to think of our different signs, pumpkins and things like that, tomatoes. We welcome questions, but we also want to make sure that you're getting the straight answer. So sometimes we will have actually told our staff, do not answer a question unless you are 110% sure of your answer. Because there's different facets of farming that people want answers to, and if you answer it improperly, you are now the expert because they're asking you, right? And so we try to maintain that with our staff, saying, do not answer a question that you don't know the answer to, because it's so important. I never thought being a farmer and doing farm markets and direct marketing, I also have to be an advertising agency. That's tough in itself. It's not just the role of growing it and picking it and harvesting it and preparing it and making it look nice. I actually have to do a lot of preparing to get people to come to our farm, because we've had people who have been coming to our farm picking pumpkin for years and say, oh, you sell vegetables, you sell meat. It's just one of those things that you just never really had to think that you had to prepare yourself for. And animal agriculture is part of what we do. And it's very important that I convey to you that I can tell you what happened to that animal while it grew. I can tell you that when I dropped that animal off at the processor, that I thanked that animal. And I know that may sound strange to other people, but that's truly how I believe. And when you go into the grocery store, and they're also needed components, but when you go into a grocery store, they can't tell you about that information. They can't tell you how that tomato grew. They can't tell you how that animal was raised. They are bringing quality products as well, I'm aware of, but trying to keep everything local is very, very important. It just helps with the economy, because the amount of donation requests that I get and the donations that we give back are not something that you see, and they're also not something that I will brag about. And I know that sounds strange, but there's just certain times when you make donations, they need to be kept to yourself. And there's a lot of that happens with farmers. Farmers Against Hunger, with the gleaning efforts that they do. These are all things that how farmers give back to the communities that we have. And in order to be able to give back, we need you guys to come and support us as well. So thank you. I hope that helps.
I think that just as a practical how-to for people who are I've gone to farmers markets and I've done that kind of stuff. Also, just telling your neighbor, if you learn something about a local farmer, next time you're chatting with your neighbor, tell them, build that trust with somebody else. And also supporting the businesses that farmers depend on. Infrastructure is a huge problem in New Jersey with ag infrastructure. So if you go down to the Belle Meade Co-op and buy your mulch, now they're still in business, and I can buy calf medicine, or I can buy chicken feed. And so going to the county fair and walking around and seeing the exhibits and supporting the kids who have joined the 4-H club to learn about animal agriculture or to grow tomatoes in their garden. Those kinds of things are tiny little dollar choices that we all make. And when you put them into the local aspect, the businesses that support youth or support agriculture, it really does make a huge difference.
Thanks. And by the way, we're going to have some question and answers at the end. So if there's anything you're thinking of, just hang on to it and we'll get back to that. How do we engage our young people? How do we bring them in? As you said, Margaret, you weren't a farmer to begin with, so this is new for you. So what's your thoughts on that? And I'm going to I'm going to ask Lauren and Joanne to start the lead on this. Joanne, we haven't heard from you yet, so I'm going to bring it on down to you.
Okay, well, it's interesting to me. It's always interesting to me. I've been a 4-H leader in Somerset County for over 30 years now. It doesn't seem possible, but so I've seen an awful lot of kids come through that program, and I've seen an awful lot of kids whose lives have been changed because of that program. Maybe they had never thought that they would have a future in agriculture, and they can borrow a calf from Erica or one of my son's goats, and suddenly this whole new world opens up for them. And as a college, somebody that teaches at the college level, I can spot those kids in my classes because whether they went through FFA or through 4-H, they're just buttoned up, and they're not the kids that were waiting in line today to tell me I forgot how to get in to take a quiz. I forgot there was a quiz, right? These kids have their stuff together. It's exciting for me. This year, I have yet another one of our former 4-H members in my classes. And it's fun when I recognize them. A young lady that grew up in Erica's club, who borrowed heifers from them for years, their whole family does, is going to graduate. She's a member of this ag sorority that I'm the advisor for. She already has her spot in agriculture lined up. She will be managing a Guernsey operation in Maryland. That's a breed of dairy cow. And I'm super excited for her, and she's going to go on to do great things. And I can't help but think if she was not provided that opportunity, it wouldn't have happened. Our VOTEC here in Somerset County, Eric Fargo, is doing great things. I'm on their advisory board now. He's trying to implement some animal science curriculum into his program as well. But you never do know when you are going to meet that young person who, I never thought of ag as an option. Even my son's girlfriend, who lives, in a regular house in Branchburg, over dinner said, I think I might like to go to school for agriculture. And I was so excited to hear that.
So I'm going to come out this from the other end. I am that kid that was interested in agriculture that kind of never found a way in. I knew about 4-H and things like that as a kid, but my parents, it just wasn't something they wanted for me, and I love them dearly. I had to make trade-offs to be able to take horseback riding lessons, like make certain grades and do other activities like soccer and softball in order to have my lessons. And when I wanted to get more involved, it was because I had a car and a job and I could afford to do it on my own. But like I said, I was lucky enough here that I think I probably may have been one of those students, but with our manager here, Ron, that every time he walked in the door, I was just drawn to him. Like, what were you doing today? And what's it like raising the cattle here? Oh, one calf. Like, what do you do when that happens? And how do you make hay? And I think I just wore him down enough that he let me start to come out to the farm and see what happens out here. And I've been absolutely drawn to it. So I don't know if I have like the answers now, how to get like kids like me more involved, but I think that's definitely going to be something I'd like to be a part of here in Somerset County, but through Duke Farms as well, because I am so, and now that I am a part of it, I see that there are ways to do it, even if you might never be able to access to own farmland, like you said, to work for other organizations, to work for some of the companies that support farmers, working for seed companies or as an agronomist or in animal nutrition. There are a lot of ways to be involved, and you can pursue it even if you're not going to be a farmer. And I was just so lucky here to kind of fall into a mentorship and to have an organization that said, this person wants to learn about cows and learn from this person who's been doing it for so long to kind of carry it on here when he retires. So just if anyone out there has kids or anything or wants to be involved, even because I wasn't a kid, I was already 25 or 26 when I came about this opportunity. And it really was just asking questions and wanting to be involved and following him around the farm as he was weighing steers and, checking cows. And he was able to see that in me, that she is really interested in this. I'm going to give her a chance. And I'm very fortunate that he did. And I really, really love what I'm doing now. And so, yeah, I came out the other end. I don't have the answers yet for how to get more kids involved, but I know that I want to be a part of it. Sure.
So some years ago now, I was involved in a program that was called Reinventing Agriculture Education. And I want to say that it was so long ago that we were actually talking about the year 2021 like it was way far off in the future. And so it was a panel not like this, but the guests were guidance counselors and teachers and folks like that. And by dumb luck, my guidance counselor from high school was there. And so we had lunch together, and he said, I love what you're telling us. Agriculture would be just such an amazing opportunity for so many of our young people, but you have to convince the parents that that's a viable career path for them. And that is really very, very difficult. My own son is going to school for history. I'm done arguing with him, right? It's fine. This is not for everyone. But I think as a community as a whole, and certainly as parents, we really need to listen to our kids that have the interest in agriculture and support them to find their path forward.
I mean, I can. So the one thing is, Joanne's family was one of the first to lease animals to kids, and it was called Borrow a Calf. But somehow National changed it to a leasing program, which actually makes it sound like the kids pay. And for over 25 years, my husband also leased out animals, and my kids did as well. And there was never a penny charged to any of those kids. In return, sometimes the kids were asked to do chores around the farm, but they never had a financial responsibility except for possibly buying halters and being responsible to get them to the shows. And what an amazing thing that is for a child that doesn't have that opportunity. And that's why, it is the parents that have to be able to make that commitment for their kids. But if you know of somebody, I strongly encourage you, if you see that their child has a love, to get them involved in any of these programs. My son went through the VOTEC ad program as well. He went to Universal Technical Institute. Nope, sorry, not there. He went to UNOH, University of Northwestern Ohio, because that was the one that we could find for ag mechanics. It wasn't any of these other ones. They were just all trying to push refrigeration and large commercial vehicles. So he's back on the farm with us. We're really happy to say, and we're kind of seeing how that's going right now because they all have their own ideas. But so right now the farm is holding 3 generations on it, and I just can't say enough about the 4-H program and FFA. My son was a part of being in VOTEC, and the programs are so different, but yet they're so similar. Because it's not even just teaching about agriculture, it's also teaching about life and how to speak. And, like Joanne said, she can pick those students out in a heartbeat just because of their training and their background. So thank you.
As a mini promotion, the Somerset County 4-H is having an open house to display their club information on September 23rd at 6:30.
Thank you, Erica. And I just thought of one other thing I forgot to mention that I've learned and benefited a lot from is all the different breeds of cattle do have their own associations, and you typically find them at fairs and shows. And one thing I found neat in working with my manager, Ron, kind of outside of Duke Farms, is like the Simmental Association has a regional show where you could come and you don't have to have a cattle to show, but they do things like public speaking and sales talk and different quizzes where you have to have knowledge. So there's a ton of things out there, even, if you don't have an animal, that you could get involved in ag.
Well, when you say public speaking, I attended the Outstanding 4-Hers event recently. Talk about public speaking. So if you have an interest in public speaking and any degree of interest in agriculture, 4-H is for you. These students were amazing with their poise and grace and delivery. So 4-H really does incredible things with our young people. So thank you to all the volunteers involved with 4-H, past and present. You had touched on, when you were all talking, about some parents that discourage their children from pursuing agriculture. Perhaps the parent was afraid and protective of their child because this was going to be hard, long days. You can't take days off from animals or plants. There's no vacations in the summer. And perhaps it's a parent's way of trying to overprotect their child because it is a harder lifestyle. And speaking with one of our farmers earlier, had a knee replacement. It's a physically demanding job. So as women, we have certain unique hurdles in this physical demands in agriculture. And I want you to just share with me about that, the physical demands, how to overcome some of the unique challenges that you have as women in agriculture. I'd like to speak with Erica and Lauren down on this end about your thoughts with that. You guys are dealing with cows. They're rather large animals, and I would imagine that requires some degree of strength on your end. So can you share with us about that?
So as far as physical strength, equipment is very helpful. I can't lift a round bale, but my tractor sure can. But that was a hurdle in and of itself. I remember when I first wanted to come out to the farm and it became a real possibility. So many people, you want to learn to drive that big tractor? I'm like, well, I don't necessarily want to, but I think I can. And I still have, like, my heart stops every time I need to pull into traffic with something large, but I can do it. I can get it done. I'm never going to be a mechanic with any of it, and I'm never going to be the world's best operator, but it is a great kind of feeling that I can do this. Like, I could take care of these cows. I could clean this barn. I could feed them. And the equipment with the cows themselves as well. When I first started here, the way we would work cattle is they were all halter broke. And I don't know if any of you have ever met my boss, but he's very, very tall and very large. And he would hold them over so we could, do whatever we needed to do. But now there are handling facilities or just chute systems that we could use to safely hold the cattle. So I think that has taken a lot of the barriers away for working cattle and getting things done on the farm is the different equipment that we're lucky enough to have to be able to do that. Another thing that I think I kind of am still working through is and I don't think this is a woman-man thing, but I am just more of an emotional person. And I think sometimes it's like, oh, she's a girl, she's not tough enough, she's going to cry when a calf dies or whatnot. And I am emotional, but I don't think that makes me any less in this field. I think it's an asset sometimes, just that amount of caring and willing just to be open with, yeah, I really don't like when that happens, and it's going to go even more next time to try and prevent it. But yeah.
I feel similarly about equipment operation. Yeah. I think it's really important to in agriculture to think of women and men as complements to each other. Lauren was mentioning she's never going to be the world's best tractor driver. My husband aspires to be the world's best tractor driver, and that's his area of interest. I'm so glad that he is mechanically inclined. I also don't feel that I need to explore any deeper into just basic day-to-day operation. But I do think that women bring such a compliment. For years, my dad only hired women to milk cows because they're gentler, they're calmer, they're less impulsive, they're more thorough. Like, studies have shown that. Universities and dairy science programs have studied that. And so women have this huge, just different creativity, different ideas. And I think it's so important to include them. But I think specifically when you're thinking about some of the barriers, I don't know if anyone has ever said to you or any of you, like, oh, you're going to be the one going to milk those cows. You're going to be the one to drive the tractor. There's just a lot of assumptions. We all make assumptions, but there's a lot of assumptions. And at first you might feel like it's flattering, like, yeah, I am going to drive that. But when it comes down to it, they're assuming you can't. So that can be really frustrating to me, especially when someone, a visitor comes in the barn and says like, oh, can you teach my daughter to work that hard? And I'm thinking, can you teach your daughter to work this hard? Do you work this hard? So sometimes I feel like the mindset is really frustrating, how people, make assumptions. But when you are willing to work hard and to learn new skills and to build trust with people, I think, especially in our generation and increasingly in agriculture as a whole, from anything from like veterinarians to farmers to ag educators, there are so many really, really talented women doing all sorts of things. And the more proof there is, the more that momentum builds.
I agree with what both of you said. I personally love driving equipment, and the coolest thing I get to do is be kind of baling hay along the road. You see the guy tooling down the road in the Mercedes, and he's like looking at you like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm baling hay, dude, and my rig costs more than yours." So, but it's exciting. I think this is a really exciting time in agriculture, especially for women. My school, I think most schools now, we don't differentiate between men and women in our classrooms, right? In fact, the majority of my classes have way more women in them than men. And that's across the board. My dairy business classes, my intro to animal science. Now, some of them want to go off to be veterinarians, but increasing numbers of them want to go into agricultural production at some level, right? Believe it or not, we get a lot of interest in people going to work for chicken companies. That is an unmet need. All Purdue, Mountain View Farms, all of the big ones. And it's exciting. They don't care who they hire; they just want people, right? But I think that for years, and even when I was at Del Valle as an undergrad, my boss, I was a horse person back then, but my boss would only hire women to work with in the breeding facility because women have an innate ability to recognize when there is going to be a problem, right? You can look at a mare, a foal, whatever, and say, we need to call the vet for that animal. Erica mentioned that she does a lot of the herd health aspects of their farm. Calf care was something that historically has always fallen to the woman at the farm. And it just happened in the past. And now we recognize that's your next generation of your herd, right? And if you are doing your job right as a farmer and making good breeding decisions, those are your most valuable animals. So in my mind, it makes perfect sense to have the brightest person on the farm taking care of those calves and ensuring that they're going to survive.
So just a quick little story. One little boy came up to me at church one day and he looked at me and said, "How's Farmer Norris doing?" And I stopped for a minute because I knew what he meant. And I looked at him and I said, "I'm doing fine, thanks." And he said, "You're not the farmer, you're a woman." And that moment is when every person on our farm giving a farm tour introduced themselves no longer as Mr. or Mrs., but as farmer and your name. So when Farmer Shannon gives you a tour, you're now getting used to the fact that it could be Farmer Shannon, it could be Farmer Mackenzie, it could be Farmer Rich, but we're all farmers and it doesn't matter what we are. And it's breaking down those barriers that is what's going to make it okay for not looking at positions, but looking at people and where they excel. Although my husband's always said, there's nothing like a woman taking care of the calves just because maternally that instinct just kicks in. So thank you.
I like getting the mic last because I can chime back in. But that is a lot of what my boss has said to me too. I kind of focused when I was speaking about, the things I had to overcome. But when he hired me, he said, "This is why, because I see you out there watching the cattle. You know all of their little, habits and their little differences. So you're going to be the one that's going to notice that one's not quite right, that one's off." So I think that's definitely a trend.
So before you leave, I want you to take a look at that display board in the back, because one of Joanne's classes at Del Val, the student picture, I believe, is the bottom right corner. And I want you to look at how many females are in that picture. And I believe the one man that has a lanyard is another professor. So I believe there was one male student. But to echo the point of what these women are saying, the future of farming definitely includes females. And that picture is just proof of the people that are going to study in this field. So do take a look at it before you leave. It's very interesting. So Margaret, earlier you were talking about the pandemic and people wanting to know their food sources and where their food was coming from. It's led a lot of consumers to want to know where this is happening. So can you and Debbie and Erica share what changes you've seen occurring since the beginning of this pandemic in March of 2020 and about food sourcing?
So, how many of you remember the financial crisis 2008? Yeah, right. Like that was a big deal. When this pandemic hit, I felt this deja vu, because in 2008, I was running the Hunterdon Land Trust, which had just started a producers only market. And all of a sudden, it felt like everybody wanted to know about where their food was coming from. Everybody wanted to grow a garden in their backyard. There's something about this moment of sort of scarcity and fear that I just feel like drives people to the basics, right? Like, where am I getting my food? Where am I going to get my water? And so I feel like I felt that again when this pandemic hit, right? We're all in our homes. There's shortages in the grocery store. And it all of a sudden becomes very clear, like, oh, wait, it's not as easy as it usually is. And in that moment, we saw even though this place was shut down in early days of the pandemic, because we had to figure out how to keep our employees safe and how to keep visitors here safe, we reopened and there was a commitment to, we're going to have the farmers market again. And people showed up in droves. Like, they wanted to be here. They wanted to connect with their farmers. Our community garden, as Commissioner Drake here will attest, is sold out, immediately. And as soon as the membership opens up early in the year, those plots get taken. So I really do hope that we don't lose that insight as things get comfortable again, right? Like, we go back to like, oh, I don't need to worry about this anymore. It's an opportunity to seize, and I encourage the county and the Ag Board to do what they can to really keep that message going, because it is critical to our sustainability. These crises aren't going to stop. They're going to keep happening, right? So we have to continue to build the infrastructure that we need in our local communities to support farmers and to really connect the consumers to those outlets for local products, because it's essential to our survival. I mean, we all felt that this year, right? Like, we all felt really close to that. But yeah, we had an overwhelming response to those kinds of programs during this pandemic, and learned a lot in the process of what the consumer wants, and also learned a lot about, like, we've got a lot of farmers who have really tapped into that direct consumer kind of model, right? But I would say there's not enough because I know that markets compete for farmers, right? And farmers are overwhelmed by the demands. They can't be in a million places at once. They've got labor challenges. It costs them money whenever they want to show up at a market. So we need more. We need more local farmers to really continue to meet the demand that consumers have for these products.
So during the pandemic, it was interesting how many people turned to the farm. We changed our entire setup around. We actually opened early. We sourced food in. We didn't make that a secret that it was being sourced in, because it had to be, because food doesn't grow that quick. We are open on Saturdays from 10 to 2 to sell meat. And then somebody said to me, "You're going to sell out of meat this weekend." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Well, we didn't sell out of meat that weekend, but we started sourcing food in. And within the matter of a month, we went from a few people coming and visiting me on a Saturday to having a tent like this open with produce in, and we just changed our whole philosophy around from we wouldn't let anybody touch the food. We were taking it, putting it in the baskets, and we would walk around with them. And it was such an interesting concept that, we had lines. The line to get into our place, we would open, whatever day it was, we open up. There were 7 cars sitting on the side of the road. We had to open up a half an hour early because we knew that that was going to be a problem where we are. Everything changed so fast, and then it went on for a year, and then kind of seemed like this year people weren't as interested of coming back to the farm because we don't have all the extra offerings like toilet paper and those types of things. And I even noticed that 2 of my farmers markets were down, but 2 of them were up. Actually, I'm sorry, 3 of them were up and 1 was down. But when you go into a town in a farmer's market, you have to be conscious of how much the farmer's time is worth. Because when a farmer packs up to go to a farmer's market, for a market that'll start at 9 o'clock, we start packing that truck at 6, right? And then to get there, and then the farmer's market ends at 1 o'clock, we don't get done until 3:30, 4 o'clock, because everything has to be unpacked and done. And then after that, all the animals and all that other stuff that a farmer has to do gets done after that. So it was great when everyone was coming to the farm, but now all of a sudden, it just kind of seems like they're not, and I'm not sure why. I know that we're going to get a lot of visitors, which I'm really appreciative, because we're going to start with the animals being open and coming and picking your own pumpkins and things like that. Really, really important just to stay local and loyal. I mean, Jersey Fresh is a great product that has been publicized and, trying to keep everyone with the Jersey Fresh is Cooler advertising campaign that they did this year. We just really need people to know that the farmers really care about the products that they're putting there and that they can talk to the farmer. They can't talk to the farmer when it's in the grocery store. So while the pandemic opened up a lot and people were able to come in and talk to their farmer, they felt really good about it. I don't know how to continue that feeling with them because the security of food is back in the grocery stores again. So, there are people that want to know, they want to be able to talk to us, and it's really good, but I need more people to do it. So.
Let this thing's going by. Can I talk? All right.
So first of all, I waited in line well over an hour to buy food from her a couple of times last year. But one of the things that I've been kind of preaching to my students is what I hope we learn from this COVID situation is really how valuable our farms are and how important it is for us to get out there and support them. And maybe some of these consumers will start thinking, boy, instead of going to the supermarket because I feel like strawberries in January, I'll think a little more locally and I'll support those local farms.
I kind of wanted to echo some of what Debbie was saying. We're a commercial farm, so we don't have a market. I think I've mentioned that before. And for dairy farmers, you probably saw reports of people dumping milk at the beginning of COVID. And that was a labor issue. And we all have been hearing about labor issues. But it was a really scary time for us. We couldn't just sell our milk on the corner because it has to be processed, it has to be bottled. And those aren't things that you can just do, at the snap of a finger. So it really was, our pricing is, we always get projected prices for the next month, and our prices were almost cut in half just like instantly. It was a really, really scary time to be a dairy farmer. And it did show us, so it's been interesting just talking to other farmers in the area about how their planting strategy for this year and what percentage down they were going to plant this year or how much more or something they were going to plant because of last year and trying to calculate those numbers. So it's just been a really interesting phenomenon just to observe, even as, someone who's not growing vegetables or, produce right on the farm.
Thank you. So, okay, I'm going to prepared for this last one here. Somerset County is a leader in the most female-owned and operated farms in the state. Today's discussion truly emphasizes that the future is female in farming. So, what are some of the new trends in agriculture that excite you the most? So, why don't I pass it down to Joanne to start, and then we'll do a circle that way.
So I've always been excited to be a woman involved in agriculture. I've never really experienced any prejudice against me based on gender. And one of the things that I think is really cool working with this next generation is I don't think they see themselves as any different than a man in a barn or in a field or anywhere else, right? We have, this is our time. We deserve a place in the barn or in the field or in the tractor or even in vet clinics, right? Because we're incredibly talented, we're smart. I like the part about how do you deal with large animals, and we deal with large animals by being smarter than them and outthinking them. And as I tell my livestock handling kids, you have to convince them it's a good idea to get on that truck to maybe go meet their maker, but we spend a lot of time really just out thinking things. I am excited when I see people that are coming up with new products that are figuring out ways to connect with the public, whether it's through social media. There's a lot of really cool Instagram accounts to follow, Facebook pages, even funny stuff you see on TikTok, right? That's ag related, that's telling our story. And I think that is really another area where women excel in that ability to tell our stories. A lot of programs out there that are specifically available for women to whether they are to make those connections with existing farms that may be dealing with an older owner. A lot of loan programs specific to women. We're seeing a lot of in the dairy industry. We're starting to see people that are getting these milk plants in a box, right? They're basically shipping containers that have an entire processing setup in them, and they're a relatively low cost way to get involved in that business. My family, that's what we did. We milked cows, we processed and sold all our milk right off the farm. And conservatively, a young man, I know this is about women, but a young man came to talk to my dad about getting involved with that. And dad's like, you're looking at $1 million just to get in the game, kid. And that young man, also a Del Val grad, figured out a way to do it for $100,000. And he's doing it well, and Debbie's selling his product. So, but those opportunities are out there. You just have to maybe think a little differently, be a little more creative. It's not the same old ball game, right? We have to really adapt, figure out our path. Might not be the same path that my path might not be the same as Debbie's or Erica's or Lauren's or Margaret's or anyone's, right? Follow your path, be true to yourself, and just really believe in what you're going to do.
Thank you. Yeah, the future of farming is, female farming. I can say it. If there's opportunities for people out there that are really passionate about doing things, and I have to tell you, I hate this because I've watched people do it. Joanne has been my mentor. She's not that much older than me, but in 4-H years, she was. I always admired the fact that she never let anything defeat her because she was genuine about what she did. And it wasn't because she was a female. it was because of her passion. And anybody who has that passion and that desire is going to make it in farming. Because if you don't have passion and you don't have desire, you're going to fail. And I say that because it's hard work. And I will say that both my daughters have no interest in continuing farming. And it kind of does break my heart, but I understand. My son's fiance is a nurse, and we know that she also is going to come and do some stuff on the farm because it's just natural. When you're marrying whomever is on the farm, you're marrying the farm as well. And you've got to know that there's sacrifices, a lot of sacrifices, and you got to be willing to take them. So the future lies in your own passion in order to be able to continue farming.
I would like to add that the future is very daunting. We just experienced one of the worst deadly storms in New Jersey, right in this region. 30 people died in the state of New Jersey, rising waters. We are living the future right now. This is what climate change is going to look like for all of us, right? The good news is that I truly believe this with all of my heart, that the future solutions to these big global problems that we're facing right now lie in this very concept of land stewardship and how we're going to support local land stewards like farmers, right? Like the people who are responsible for managing the land. And there's a tremendous opportunity right now with greater attention being paid to the opportunities of renewable agriculture, regenerative agriculture, small scale agriculture to contribute to carbon sequestration, pulling the carbon out of the air that we need to hold the line on a warming planet. And I actually feel that is a tremendous opportunity for this next generation, who is much more in tune with the very threats of this global crisis, because they're the ones that are going to be living with the worst impacts of it. So I think we need to think about the ways to connect land stewardship, farming, regenerative agriculture to those solutions that are going to really be essential to this next generation having a sustainable future.
Along that line, I think sort of combining a few of those ideas, it's really exciting time to find the cheerleaders in agriculture. There's so many voices on the internet, but when you tap into some of the agriculture advocates on the internet and hear not only the statistics that they cite about carbon sequestration and management of national forests and things like that, just to hear them talk about how much they love agriculture just helps to remind me how much I love agriculture. I mean, I'm only 34, but I'm tired. Like, dairy farming is exhausting. And so to have somebody to remind me what a privilege it is really important. And also, as a parent, to be raising kids on our farm and getting to see them learn and grow and have the opportunities, that's always really encouraging. It brings that feeling of new life to the farm.
I wanted to echo that as well, being new to farming and kind of dropping into it right before our pandemic when everything essentially closed and I was isolated out here. It was really neat to kind of comb social media and find other farmers and female farmers and kind of build this little community, and everyone is usually pretty encouraging, like, oh, she could do that, I could do that too, and learn from people all over the country. So that's pretty exciting to me, just to be able to connect with people without actually needing to be, in a very close proximity.
I know you like to have the microphone last, so I was. Before we open it up to general Q&A, Joanne, you had mentioned about financing. So if someone is interested in farming, I'm sure that's a significant hurdle for anyone, the financing and the finding the land. I'll just open this up to any of you. Is there any suggestions of where somebody should look to find help with that aspect of it? Or does anybody have any suggestions they'd like to share?
So people are looking to get into farming and financing. There's a couple different opportunities between FSA, which is Farm Service Agency. There's lots of low interest loans out there for different types of agriculture products and things like that. But if you're under 30, there's opportunities. Farm Credit East also is in our area, and they have opportunities for those under 30. If you're starting later in life, you might have to pay a little bit more on the interest side, but there's still opportunities for you as well. Those are the two big ones that I can think of, and I know that PNC Bank also works with farmers as well. They have a person in the area also. So between FSA and Farm Credit, they're the best places to start. Also, there's also programs like through New Jersey Ag Society called New Jersey Ag Leadership and Development. There's Annie's Project, run through Rutgers. There's different things that will help you set yourself up right. You just have to find those avenues, and Farm Credit and FSA are probably the two best to start with.
So, like Debbie said, FSA would probably be my go-to to at least start the process, because they're actually step one in any kind of financing program if you're going to go with a government entity. But certainly, once you're in with them, look to NRCS. Say you already have a property that, maybe has been abandoned and needs some upgrades, and NRCS can provide you with grant money for certainly a lot of conservation programs that you could become involved in, and Google, like I always tell my students, they're like, what does that mean? I'm like, just Google it, right? But there's nothing wrong with going on and looking for that information, because you never know when you're going to uncover something that maybe nobody else has hit on yet, right? And suddenly, they're like, oh yeah, we've been waiting for you to come. Here's some money. So
I'll just add that for years, from the beginning of my career, I worked at American Farmland Trust, and this one issue kept emerging. This was a few decades ago, so I'm not going to age myself, but there was this ongoing concern, right, about intergenerational transfer of land, and this trend where we were seeing an aging farmer population and not a lot of young folks coming up through the ranks. And I don't know that this issue has been solved. Farmland preservation is a critical piece to making farmland affordable. It's not perfect. We know that in New Jersey. It doesn't necessarily, there's still a lot of barriers to young people getting access to ownership, certainly, and even some lease situations. But I also would add that the opportunity to farm doesn't just lie with the people who are interested in getting into farming. It lies with the people who are interested in getting out of farming. And so those folks need to really think about a good estate plan. What's your succession plan look like? And finding ways, and I'm sure there are programs that I can't think of right now that are, the state has a land link program, for example, to try to connect those young farmers that are coming up with the folks that are looking to retire. And frankly, they're tired, right? They should be able to retire. And their land should be able to transfer in a way that still allows them to tap into the equity that they built up over years of hard work and still keep it affordable for the next generation that's trying to get in.
I will confirm that is not a problem that's been solved. And it's a really incredibly difficult conversation because it's so often tied up also in the daily workings of day to day and personalities. And, a lot of times the farmer who's 65 now didn't get to own the farm until they were 45 and they feel like they're just getting started. And so that, as that happens from generation to generation, it just has a huge trickle-down effect. And I don't know the solution to it other than conversation and talking about it and expressing how you actually feel. There are always farmers who wish they had someone who they could transition their farm to. And I mean, it's easier said than done, but if you're a person who's interested in trying to get access to land, I do think a face-to-face conversation with someone and honesty about, I don't want this to become a shopping center. There's value in that. It doesn't fix everything. And it's not necessarily that you're going to get met with an easy conversation or success your first try. But seeing young people who are interested is exciting to older farmers. I'm not an older farmer, but I talk to them and I know that. And so if you're, willing to work hard and you're excited about it, try and be where the farmers are. Attend the Board of Ag meeting, or I'm not sure what other example now to give, but yeah, and put yourself in the path of farmers to try and make those connections, because the average age of farmers is much higher than people probably think, and it is a huge problem.
Thank you. So I'll open this up to anybody that has a question. Coming right over.
Hi, I know where some local markets are by name, but is there like a website I can go to see where all the local farms are in Somerset? So if I wanted to find out what they had in, and
On the back of our handouts, we have in there a link to our county website. It's called the Somerset County Agriculture Series. And on there, you can put in your address and it'll give you all the farmers markets in the community and the ones closest to you within a 5, 10, and 15-mile radius. And also it has bios on each one of our preserved farms.
I'm going to have to give a plug for our planning division, especially Kate. She has done an incredible job, and we had a fantastic summer intern this year that helped us with a resource guide for farmers markets and COVID safe protocols to follow. So we are very blessed in Somerset County to have such a good team. Okay, so a question from the live feed. What is that?
So our question is, what was the moment that you knew that you wanted to either stay in ag or enter into ag?
I don't know if it was just a moment or a feeling, but the first time my manager left me by myself on the farm and went on vacation and left me, with this kind of list of things like weighing animals by myself, or, there were cows calving. It was like that feeling of like, I can do this. And I think that's the moment I was like, okay, I'd like to stay in this forever.
I remember a time in 9th or 10th grade where we took a career test, and I remember turning to a kid who was sitting beside me who was also involved in the FFA program at our high school. And I remember we both said, like, I'm so glad I already know what I'm going to do. And we were both like, we didn't, I don't think that we either of us had a fleshed out plan of how that was going to look, but we both knew like how we're going to be involved in agriculture.
Again, not a farmer, but knew that I wanted to be in some sort of work adjacent to farming. Really, as a kid, and engaging in cucumber wars with my brother and the neighborhood kids in the farm fields behind our house, and also digging in the farm dump behind our house, like every farm dump, right? Rich with old glass bottles and for some strange reason in Western New York, clamshells, which we could never understand. But I just knew that being in connection with rural landscapes and the people that are responsible for the land and managing those landscapes was really important to me.
So I joke with my students that I work with animals because I don't really like people that much, but that's not 100% true. I think it's just what you do, right? It's been in my family's farm, has been in our family since the 1700s. So even though I'm not there, I have cattle there, I'm not there every day. I had to get a grown-up job, I guess. This is the wrong way to put it, but a job with benefits, we'll say that. But I still I'm kind of attached to agriculture, whether it's doing animal health research, so I can make sure that, Erica's cows are parasite free, whether I'm teaching the next generation, I always still have my hand in agriculture.
I guess for me, it would be the moment Rich asked me to marry him. It's pretty simple, but probably one of the most profound moments that I can think of is we were not engaged yet. And I was walking up with, we were a dairy, we were milking 300 cows twice a day by the end of 2009. But somewhere around 1991, I was carrying 2 pails of milk, 5-gallon buckets, up to feed the calves, and I fell. and I dumped the milk all over me. And my future mother-in-law turned to me and said, people pay a lot of money for that, and you just got it for free. I think Rich knew at that moment that if I could take that and joke, that he knew that I was ready for the farm. So I just kind of joked, but I didn't really have a projection in life except to be a travel agent. And then I did that and I didn't like it. So this is just something that just metamorphosed, just happened. And I'm blessed and grateful, and blessed I was able to raise the kids on the farm. So thank you.
Do we have any more questions?
I want to go into the business end a little bit. I know there's a lot of handling large animals, but you're also talking about working with banks and acquiring funding and finding land. Everything seems to be computerized now, and marketing and planning ahead for your crops that you mentioned. How do you do that? Can you go into just maybe women and the business end? And I don't know what you teach in that. I hope you coordinate with your business department, but I'd be interested in any of your thoughts on that. Having had my own wrangles with banks in the 1980s who did not want to lend money to a woman without a man to co-sign. And my blessed father said, well, we won't repeat what he said, but he said, we'll do it.
Yes, I was just mentioning to the Secretary of Agriculture that there should be college programs in agricultural and in economics.
So running a farm is no different than any other business. And one of the courses that I have the good fortune of teaching is dairy business analysis. First thing I tell my kids, you need a business plan. You need to go in there with goals. You need to know exactly what your market is going to be, where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are. Say we're going to start, selling milk, right? And we want to direct market milk. Debbie wants to direct market beef, whatever it is, right? We need to know where those customers are going to come from. That suburban development that surrounds our farm on 3 sides is an opportunity for us, right? Because there's our client base. The young man that went into direct marketing milk, when COVID hit, he polled his neighbors and said, hey, if you could come here to buy milk, would you? And they overwhelmingly said yes. So it's no different than any other business. It might seem like all I do is play with calves and goats and all those fun things, but at the end of the day, it is a business, and sometimes we have to make really hard decisions based on our profitability and if it's even going to work.
Both Erica and I completed Annie's project, which was primarily for women, well, it was for women, and it went through all financial aspects. There were 6 parts to it, if I remember correctly, and one of them was developing a marketing plan at the end. Also, Farm Credit, when they lend you money, they also make you go through a business plan as well to make sure that everything that you're doing, you know what you're getting into. So.
I think just from an attitude standpoint, I had noticed this, and then I heard someone say that men will be more likely to apply for a job if they have at least like about 60% of the qualifications, where women will apply until they have 100%. And my husband always says, well, what's the worst that can happen? Just ask and see. And to try and adopt that mindset of like, what's someone going to say? No. Like asking questions and being like, well, why can't I? It often just leads you to another opportunity. And that's not it's just like a practical, like mental approach. It's not a like how to get a business loan, but I think that can really open doors that you don't even maybe expect to open by just asking.
Any other questions? I'm coming. Over.
I have a question about the kids in the 4-H, hoping to get them into the future of farming, the boys and the girls. I've been to a number of 4-H's and covered them, and I've seen the kids really enjoy it, but I've also seen them when market day comes. they're going to be sold. They're going to become meat. You're going to break your heart. How do you convince the kids it's okay and keep going?
That is part of some of our biggest messaging. I mean, I casually joke that you can't be a farmer unless you just want your heart broken over and over, because cows are really good at that. It's their expertise. But it is part of one of the main messages that we tell the kids is we give them the best life while we have them. And I have a 10-and-a-half-year-old cow right now, and she's not looking so good. And I'm not fond of the idea of selling her at all, but she has had such a good life. And it is, it's all in, I think when you see the hands-on, like how dear those animals are to us, but also how important of a source of protein they are. And it's a hard lesson. I distinctly remember watching a calf die when I was like 5, and it's a very, very hard lesson. But it is such an important lesson as a person in the world to whom very hard things are going to happen. It's a lot easier to have that be an animal. And that lesson applies to your dog. It applies to your grandmother when she, passes away. It's an important lesson, and it's hard, but it's so, so worthwhile.
Debbie and I co-lead a livestock club, and so we spend an awful lot of time explaining to our members that these are animals that are incredibly well taken care of, but they serve a purpose. And we have swine as one of our club projects, and when we first started that, we had a bunch of people with pot-bellied pigs that wanted to join the club, and I was like, nope. And one of the agents kind of got a little aggravated with me, and I was like, it's completely different, right? The diet's different, the care of them is different. No pets, and Debbie and I have really stuck by that policy across all of the species that we do have in our club. But like Erica said, it's a really important life lesson. I don't know that there is an animal with a bigger, better gig in the world than a 4-H project, because boy, do they get spoiled. But it's, those kids are going to go forward from that day. And yes, emotional. I did market lambs briefly, and realized I really hate sheep with a passion that burns really brightly. And but you know what? As much as I couldn't stand them, I got a little weepy during auction. And you know what I found out? Mark backed me up on this. When you start crying, people bid more money for your animals. So my dad used to accuse me of slipping an onion in my sleeve when I went up there. But it is. And those kids, yes, they're upset. But they know they did everything they could for that animal. They know that animal was extremely well taken care of. It had the very best feed. It had the very best vet care. The things that we do to our market animals before a show, when they're getting blow dried and we're worried about conditioner on their hair and keeping them cool and all of those things. So those kids are going to now go forward and say, when someone's like, oh my God, farmers are so mean to their animals, how can they eat them? They're going to say, you know what, those animals have a really nice life, and they are well taken care of, and they really and genuinely matter to their owners.
One of the things that my kids are different just because of the nature of growing up on the farm. And one thing that we always said to them is honesty. We didn't sugarcoat anything that was going to happen. The market lamb, they have to see them on the rail afterwards. You can ask me later if you don't know what that means. They would judge them, and they would learn about what they ate, how they ate, and how it came, into the muscles, and provided the best quality that there was. In our club, for 2 years in a row, 3 years, 3 years, they did a market pig, and the pig was not sold. The pig was donated to the food banks. So the kids worked with the animal, they knew the outcome, and it wasn't helping them in any way. There was no funds raised for it that they were getting back. The animals the first year, I think, went directly to the Network Food Bank in Bridgewater. And then I was at a farmer's market in Franklin, and we had a jar out there specifically for that fund, and that helped pay for the processing, so the kids didn't have to do that. And it went to Franklin, Hillsborough, and then in Bridgewater, and the same thing for the following year, and then COVID hit, and the one who initiated that project decided to go away to college. So we haven't moved any forward with this year yet because we don't know, but helping them do that helps them understand about feeding and not getting anything in return, but donating it to the food banks. So being honest and explain everything that's going to happen ahead of time, it doesn't make it easier, but it makes you understand. So I hope that answers the question.
We had a steer born, or calf born last year that we made into a steer, and our kids would introduce him as, "This is Ferdinand, we're going to eat him." So teach him early, tell him the truth.
And that note, we have time for one last question. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, what's the live feed?
Someone mentioned suburban neighbors. Do the farm operators feel that they have that they may have more right to farm issues today than in years past?
We are surrounded by people, and driving equipment on the road that is slow, that is big, and our main road that backs up with traffic every night during rush hour. It's incredibly dangerous, and so we have a lot of struggle with that. We farm within certain hours so that we can try and avoid some of that. But I don't know if anyone else uses the Nextdoor app, but sometimes my husband will just kind of like get on there and scroll around and see things about like, equipment noise or concerns about animals, things like that. And a lot of times he just goes in and clears it right up. We did some aerial seeding with a crop plane the other day. We were seeding red clover into a standing crop of corn. And that was pretty alarming to a lot of our neighbors. They're like, what is happening right now? We're being buzzed by this yellow plane. So he was able to just go on Facebook and like leave a message, and people were so grateful to have that explanation. And I think, once again, like connecting with people, they'll be better neighbors if they know that you're trying to be a good neighbor too. But it is a huge problem, and we're trying to take care of them when they don't know they're in danger and they're actively putting themselves into danger. And we start milking at 4:30 in the morning, and we've had neighbors complain about it, but most often they're more understanding when they hear the explanation behind it.
I think Erica mentioned really briefly that it's important to be a good neighbor. So we're not going to go and spread manure Memorial Day weekend, right? Because that's just asking for your neighbors to be angry. I will tell you that every time a home changes hands in our neighborhood, it's a little bit, we're a little bit concerned until we meet the folks, right? Because you never know when that person is going to move in that thinks it's so beautiful that there's a farm right there until they find out that the cows make noise or there's dust from the equipment, right? But for the most part, I think that the public really appreciates having farms in their community, and like to look out and see that activity. But it is, again, important for us to tell our story. And when they do come to us with concerns, explain, well, this is what's happening and this is why it's happening. And oftentimes they'll go away satisfied because, now they get it. We're not doing it just to be a jerk, right? We're doing it for a reason. And a lot of times, I'll tell this quick story. I know we're getting short on time, but no one was home and the cows got out. And we came home and we found the cows, the group of heifers, standing in the barn, and they were not in the barn when we left. So it was kind of puzzling to us, but whatever. And then the next day or 2 days later, one of the neighbors came in and said, yeah, the heifers were all the way across the street. So we rounded them up and we chased them back and put them in the barn. And we hoped that was okay. And we were like, oh yeah, that was fine, but that very easily could have resulted in them calling the police, lawsuits, the whole 9 yards. Just really, really, really fortunate. And they kind of felt like they were part of the farm team.
Probably one of the biggest things is I have to do more of it, but when we're moving equipment is let people know. There's a very dangerous section in which we have to move equipment. I actually have to stop the cars, and I get cars tell me that they can make it. And probably the funniest thing to me is when I edge up just a little bit for them not to pass, and then the combine comes up over the hill and they're like, oh. So probably, hopping on Facebook probably wouldn't be the worst thing to say. Hey, just so you know, South Branch Road, River Road's going to be tied up for a little bit because we're moving equipment. Maybe they might go a different way around. And, or maybe they're like, okay, I know this is coming. I've got to deal with it. So that they don't try to pass. Maybe it's a thing where I say, just so you know, my son's out there driving the combine. Now it puts a mom's perspective on it. Please don't pass. But it's definitely, speaking with your neighbors, letting them know, not spreading manure on Memorial Day or Labor Day weekend, because they do frown upon that. But, reserve those things for Mondays, Tuesdays. But yeah, just making sure that you make that connection.
Before we give a final wrap up, I just wanted to walk over to our president of the Ag Development Board, Mark Kirby, and have some words.
Yeah, just a few. And I know Debbie and Joanne, Erica real well. So I always turn around. Debbie's heard this before. Okay. I farmed and Moses had short pants on. Okay. I did not come from a farm family. Right. So I was fortunate enough to move into an area in Franklin Township that had farms around it, and I worked for family farms. And the wives stayed on the farm. Right. So these young ladies up here who are describing what they do now in agriculture, and I commend you, Laura, for coming into agriculture, are the future of agriculture. But this future's been building for many, many years. The farm wives, the farm families, the wives ran the checkbook, took care of the calves and the cows, okay? Took us around to the farm, to the farms that we had to go work on, the guys. And they also decided what was going to happen on those farms with their husbands, equal partners. Okay, so how that's involved is, and we've heard a lot of things talk about equipment, making it easier to work. Back in the day, it was a physical job, man's job. Not to disparage the women, some women could handle the man's job, okay, but it was a man's job. Today, with the modern technology we have out there, the women, young ladies, are able to do the work that we were able to do when we were younger. And it makes our life easier. So, first of all, I want to thank Kate for putting this on, even though it got canceled last year. Okay, it's a great format. I want to thank our panelists. Great format. You guys answered a lot of questions, and hopefully everybody got everyone out. Our commissioners who came today, thank you very much. I really appreciate this. It's my wife works. Excuse me. Here we go. My wife works off the farm so that we can have a farm, which is what today's problem is. You heard Joanne allude to it. She had to go get, quote unquote, a real job. Okay? And that lies the problem. Now, so Nancy works off the farm so that we can farm. She also is my 50-50 partner. And believe me, she is the one that runs the care on the cows and the calves. She doesn't run the checkbook on the farm. That's mine. but any financial businesses is a 50-50 split. So thank you very much for coming out to talk about what you guys do in the future. Okay, I'm hoping one of my granddaughters will take over the business. Who knows when that will be? I don't know. But again, thank you for everybody coming out, and thank you for supporting Somerset County, supporting the CADB. We're going to get to our goal of 16,000 acres one of these days. We're almost at 10,000 with the stuff that's in the pipeline now, so we'll be having another big party down the road. So again, thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'm echoing that again. Thank you all for coming today. Wish you a safe ride home. And thank you so much to our panelists for their time and experience and efforts here today. Have a good one.